Alright guys, this video is for everyone in the thick of their growing season where your garden is chaos and it's a mess. It's for the ADHD gardeners who forget to get things done. This is for everyone with a messy garden, basically. It's also for just everyone in general to learn not to have judgment. So you guys out there with your super tidy gardens, stay tuned, because no two gardens are ever the same. If you're on my newsletter, which is linked below with a freebie, let's say it's like a free resource, you have heard probably 20 times over the season, no two gardens are ever the same. So not yours to your neighbors and not even your own from the season before. And that's how a garden is meant to be. It's something that ebbs and flows, and it changes with your needs. It changes with the season. It just changes. It's an ever-changing thing. So live with Live Life Outdoors here from South Central Pennsylvania, roughly zone 6A, 6B. I had a comment that said, seriously, I hate unorganized gardens. I don't know if that was a dig at my garden or if that was just like oh hey, you're cleaning up, that's awesome. I don't like unorganized gardens. I don't know which way I was supposed to take that, but I wanted to talk about that because I feel like a lot of people right now feel bad about their gardens, and there are a lot of people who just aren't nice about it to others because they have super tidy lives and they think everyone else should too. And that's just not how it works. So a little bit about me as we walk through the garden here. I have OCD, and for my mental health, I prefer everything to be nice and clean and tidy. However, in contrast to that, I do have ADHD. I do struggle with depression, and those things don't go together. Because one of those things wants everything to be nice and tidy, and the other one doesn't want to get up and do stuff, but it needs things to be nice and tidy to get better, to get up and do stuff. A lot of you in the comments here know what I'm talking about. So yes, I am a person who likes to be clean and tidy, and I try to keep my garden tidy, but it just doesn't always happen, and it's really not happened this season. Now, the thing that they did say was organized. What I will tell you is there's a difference between an organized garden and a not maintained garden, okay? So my garden is organized. It's just not maintained. So what I mean by that is everything has a rhyme or reason to the location in this garden. So I don't just haphazardly plant things typically, unless I'm like running out of the space at the end of the season. And I'm finding these spoon tomatoes as we're in here. But yeah, everything has a space. Everything was done on purpose. So just because you see a garden that is messy and not well maintained does not mean that it's not organized and that the person didn't put thought into it. Everyone's organization of a garden is going to be different, and it's going to depend on the person themselves. It's going to depend on their needs, their lifestyle. It's also going to depend on their climate. While I do live in a pretty damp climate, I am able to plant things closely together for the most part without having to deal with too much blight. For tomatoes and then just other things like powdery mildew, I do struggle with that, but I try to pick varieties that are resistant. So this time, what I decided this season is I was going to make sure that I gave space for my beans, because it's always like an afterthought, because they don't get started inside, even though I do start mine inside. We've talked about this before. The birds like to pick out my seeds in the ground, and then I just don't get anything. So I'll start these like a week or two, maybe like in the greenhouse before I'm ready to plant them out. But the previous years, I just kept forgetting to leave space for these things. So I intentionally left all this space for my beans. So that was my first intentional decision for planting this garden. And then the things that are haphazard, are the brassicas. That's about the only thing in this garden that are haphazard, aside from the things that volunteered. The other intentional decision I made is I only wanted so many tomato plants. Like, I have way less than I did last year and the previous years. So this entire cattle panel all the way down had tomatoes on it the previous years. That was too much for us. And even this season, I have learned what I grew this time is too much for us. So I'm going to cut back even more the next season. Also intentional, all of the tomatoes go on the cattle panel. All of the vining things go on the cattle panel. And then the peppers go in front of the other things. Peppers don't need the cattle panel. Do they need this? Do they need support? Yes, but I can support the peppers. I'm going to go around this way. I can support the peppers by tying them to the cattle panel with long stretches of rope. So this is a hot mess. I'm going to do a garden tour and we'll talk about what's going on here. But part of that is, again, I just did not have the mental capacity this season. So things did not stay maintained. That's the magic word here. Did not stay maintained. All right, so in this section here, we pulled out all the cherry tomatoes. The cherry tomatoes were very intentional. I dropped that down to about 6 plants. That was probably about 12 in the prior season. And I put them purposely up front by the house because they're snacking tomatoes. We like to snack on them, come out, just munch on them. We'll munch on them in the garden. So that was very intentional. And you can see now that they're out of here that the peppers hang out in front of those plants. And we'll come back around here. My green stalks are intentional. They have all of the herbs to keep the seeds in a section where it's easily, this is a thing that I can actually easily maintain because it's just right up here, right front. I can make sure that the mint is not going to root into the ground. I did cut off all of the plants. It's on the other side. I cut off all the flowers from that. It's also intentional that it's right here by the house because this way we can just pop out of the door real quick from the kitchen and grab our herbs. So that's another intentional decision. And then as we come through here, this amaranth being here on the end. Okay, now guys, non-intentional decision as a volunteer. The amaranth on the end is intentional. There's also one down at that end. That is my trap crop. This keeps everything munching on this plant instead of the plants around it. So that's intentional. And I always have one at either end of the beds. I could probably use more, to be honest. So here's where the maintenance went by the wayside. I did not get my pepper plant here staked up to or tied up to the cattle panel. Same thing here. I did give it this stake. And my peppers have overall just not done great this season. Like, it was a really rough season, which added to the lack of mental capacity for doing this. But again, we've got peppers in the front, tomatoes in the back. We have our flowers that are purposely interspersed to attract the pollinators. Same thing here with the nasturtiums. And then we've come full circle to the back here. So in the back here, this has been a little bit different each season, but the super vining things get the arched panels. So I've got lima beans on the back there. They're Christmas lima beans. And I usually do my zucchini down here. Again, that's intentional because this is the part that gets the shade cloth the whole time. For me, zucchini just does better if it has shade cloth. My garden gets sun practically all day long, especially this bed right here. So I do have this part of the shade cloth up all season. My cucumbers go in here. Those are hardly ever successful, but they go in here and they get a cattle panel. Last season I had cucamelons. Those get the arch cattle panel. But yeah, everything is intentional. There is organization, regardless of it looking like chaos. just because it's not maintained. Even like, and now we got the tomato out of here, guys. It's crazy. The whole thing was filled with a tomato. So everything's intentional. I didn't need this space during the season, so I let that tomato volunteer go because I just wanted to see if it would survive in there, and it did. So yeah, most of my garden decisions, like 95% of my garden decisions are intentional. The flowers here, this is intentional because a lot of these are perennials. They're going to keep reseeding themselves year after year. And even though things that are annuals, they may drop seeds and reseed. Now this part of the garden is going to get moved, but it was my intent to have that space where it's okay for those things to keep reseeding, because you don't want to put flowers in your garden, your food garden, that are just going to continuously take over the bed and eventually run your stuff out. And then over here is a bonus space that I didn't have last season to use. So I've got my roselle. There's extra tomato plants and extra peppers out here basically. And then my brassicas. So yeah, this area isn't the like most experimental, really, most haphazardly thrown together. But I've got my peppers back here, and guys, I see one. I see a purple pepper. Do I get to eat it? Oh no. All right, here's a good example. Oh, okay, here's another intentional thing I do. This is perfect. Okay, so this pepper here is suffering from sunscald. That's this area right here. Am I even in frame, guys? I can't see my phone right now. It's so bright. Yeah, okay. So you can see the sunscald there. And that was one of my first really big intentional decisions, probably 2 seasons ago. So what I noticed is the sweet peppers tend to sunscald way before the hot peppers ever will. Like my chili peppers, they rarely ever sunscald. So what I did is I put all my hot peppers in this bed here because it gets the most sun, like all day sun basically, like I said earlier. So hot peppers go on this side, the sweet peppers, my bell peppers, they go on this side, and then they get the benefit of being shaded by the tomatoes that are on the cattle panel here. And obviously it gets shade from the fence being there as well. And I deal with way less sun scalding than I had my first year doing this. So if you want to prevent that from happening, I do recommend switching that up, putting your sweet peppers in a more shady spot, so that you can avoid sun scald. Gorgeous woolly Cape pepper back there. Or I'm sorry, tomato plant. Wow. Yeah, I need to go back to bed, guys. So yes, my garden is in fact organized. It's just not maintained. And that's just what happens. There's 3 things going on here for me personally, for it not being maintained. One is it's the height of the garden season for me, where I am in zone 6A, 6B. This is where everything is coming in at the same time for harvest, and you got to figure out what to do with it. So that's a problem that a lot of people are at right now, is just the height of the garden season. And then my other problems, like I said, are just not being that motivated. And part of that is because I just had a really rough start to garden season, and a lot of people did this year. Things were just really wonky. So yeah, it's not maintained. I started working on it. Like I said, we pulled out the cherry tomatoes because we just weren't eating those. So that was being wasteful. Now I can get all these peppers tied up to the panel. Yesterday I spent quite a bit of time in the evening. You can see I've got a trim pile down there. I trimmed off a bunch of the tomato plants back there, and I came down here on this side and I trimmed off, you can see another trim pile down there. So I was trimming so that I could get to the tomatoes to harvest them. So I did harvest them last evening. I'll probably be out here again this evening. I'm really just trying to be intentional and putting myself out into the garden and starting to get things tidied up, get some more fall things in, and I think that's it for this one. So just if you are struggling and your garden is chaos, it's okay. It's your garden. It's going to function the way that you need it to, not how anyone else needs it to. You're learning your lessons on where you want things in the garden, what makes the most sense, things that didn't work, things that you'll never plant again, things that you need to plant less of. Maybe you have a bee allergy like I do, and I think I overdid it with the salvia. It works great. It's bringing all the bees to the garden, but I think I need less of it, or put it in pots that are like set away from the garden a little bit. And that's also, I don't have any this year. Sidetrack for a little extra bonus. Tomatillos. You have to have 2 tomatillos for them to pollinate properly. So the first year I had one at the end of this bed, one at the end of that bed. The bees absolutely loved it, which was great, but that meant I couldn't access this front part of my garden quite often. So the next season I had put them down at the other end where it didn't matter as much. So that's another intentional thing. Sorry guys about that big truck back there. But yeah, just do what works for you. And for the people who have super tidy gardens, give other people grace, because not everyone is on the same mental level that you are. And we all have different gardens. We all have different lives. Some of you may have this teeny tiny little container garden, or like 2 4-foot beds you take care of. And I feel like that's quite a common thing. I feel like a lot of people who are all about being tidy have super small gardens that are easy to maintain. This is not easy to maintain. This is 2 50-foot beds roughly, and then I have this space over there. And now that's my own fault for having very large space for me to take care of, but that's my choice. That's what I choose to do. So that might mean that I fall behind a bit. So yeah, just give people grace. Their garden is not your garden. And don't be rude about it. And I'll put something else up for you guys to watch, and I'll see you in the next one.